Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, welcome to this panel. The previous moderator spoke of the changes that have happened over the last 6 years that this forum has been taking place. But I think that the speed of change over the last 12 months is unprecedented. It was exactly a year ago when we were discussing in the same forum the need for Europe's independence, energy independence from Russia, and the necessity of exploring alternative energy sources. Today, with the developments in Ukraine and the increasing deterioration of the relations with Russia, things have evolved much faster. European states are facing great difficulties for their energy coverage, and adding to that, high inflationary trends and increasing cost is almost everything that we are faced with and creating a difficult situation that is testing our endurance, our alliances, and social cohesion. Doubts and questions are also being raised about the efficiency of certain policies, such as green transition and the faster movement away from fossil fuels. The European states, as well as Balkan states, are looking forward to closer cooperation with the US in many areas, including cooperation for energy independence. The supply of liquefied natural gas has multiplied, and at the same time, the investments in important projects concerning the energy sector and distribution networks have also increased. Today, I have the pleasure and honor to moderate a panel of distinguished participants consisting of the ambassadors to the Balkan countries and specifically Ambassador Burns from Ambassador to North Macedonia, Ambassador Hill from Ambassador to Serbia, Ambassador Mustafa from Bulgaria, Ambassador Tunis, and welcome Ambassador Tunis to this is your first SEV, so welcome, and Ambassador Kim from the embassy in Albania. So, Your Excellencies, thank you very much for being here and for maintaining this tradition of this roundtable discussion of the US ambassadors in the region. So, I would suggest that we start with some remarks. So, each one of you will have 5 to 6 minutes for your remarks, and I would just like to set the scene. Perhaps we can talk about things such as what is the impact of the energy developments in the countries where you're posted? What are your expectations as US ambassadors for the near future regarding the relations with the US and specifically the collaboration on the energy field? And what are your views regarding the greater regional cooperation in large infrastructure projects, mainly in the energy field, as an antidote for any divisive situations and other influences? So, Ambassador Burns, could we start with you?
Thank you so much, Nikolaos, and it's so great to be back here at this important forum and to continue this tradition, as you said. It's wonderful to be here with my regional colleagues because we really do approach these issues from a regional focus and perspective. And of course, that makes sense because while energy is essential to national security, it isn't an exclusive national resource. When you look at North Macedonia, a very small energy player in this region, but what we've learned from Russia's war in Ukraine, what has driven home, is that we are all completely reliant on each other when it comes to providing this basic need to our citizens. And while we as the United States stand for a Europe whole, free, and in peace, that means that we need to have partners who are able to get through these strategic challenges together. As we've said before, no hole on the map. It's very important that all of this region have the security it needs to protect its people. And for us, when we talk about energy in the region, there's 3 key elements. One is that it's secure, the second that it's integrated, and third that it's sustainable. Well, obviously, energy supplies must be secure, and eliminating dependence on Russian natural gas is an imperative. As Minister Nuruddini just said, the central heating system in Skopje and much of the industrial power is dependent on Russian gas at this point in time. The gas interconnector that North Macedonia and Greece are cooperating on together will break this monopoly, but North Macedonia needs answers to the critical shortages that exist right now. And so for that reason, while we continue to support the interconnector as a top strategic priority, we're also looking at ways that we can be helpful in their discussions, and particularly with regional partners, for example, expanding the gas capacity through Bulgaria-Transgas pipeline with Bulgaria. This would be a great opportunity to show how regional cooperation among NATO allies and partners truly does bring security together. Second point, energy systems need to be integrated. And integration goes well beyond just having multiple suppliers. It involves understanding how the energy moves across the region, from the quality and utilization of pipelines, transmission lines, the roads, rails, and ports. And this has been a subject of our discussions with the government of North Macedonia now for some time. Obviously, there's been a lot of focus on some of the big projects, the floating storage regasification unit here in Alexandroupoli, and this makes sense, rightly so, that we would focus on these big infrastructure projects. But we also can't afford to neglect the less visible parts of the system, so the grid interconnector, the metering stations, the entire transmission system. This kind of strong regional cooperation will help enable that there's effective grid balancing, and this will lead to the further resilience for the region. But without this kind of support, one country's actions could inadvertently destabilize another partner, and that doesn't serve any of our interests. Obviously, market integration would be one step even further in order to allow seamless and secure flows of electricity while also harnessing economies of scale. And each country in this region has competitive advantages, whether it be hydro resources in Albania, the photovoltaic potential in North Macedonia, nuclear in Bulgaria, offshore wind power here in Greece. With a strongly integrated grid in this region, it will be able to help better balance the load and help countries move through these different stages of the energy crisis in balance, with everyone bringing something to the table. And that brings me to the third and final point that I'll make here in terms of energy must be sustainable. That means obviously investing in renewables, reducing gas emissions, and again, building up this integrated system for load balance. Pollution obviously doesn't stop at borders. Climate change affects all of us. And if we're going to strive to achieve our green energy goals in isolation, we're not only more likely to fail, the impact that we'll ultimately have on the environment is even more limited. So we simply have to work together for this energy transition to work. Now, the difficulties in North Macedonia, as we saw from the regional panel, they're not unique. They are regional challenges. They require regional solutions. All of the Western Balkan countries committed to the EU Green Agenda in November 2020. As the minister certainly pointed out, North Macedonia has implemented critical energy reforms. They've also invested substantially to increase their renewable energy capacities in solar, wind, and also hydropower plants. They're investing in upgrading their grid, ensuring that there's uninterrupted cross-border transmission of electricity and gas. And this kind of investment that North Macedonia is making can also have a regional impact. The construction of the 400 kilowatt high voltage transmission line that would connect a power generation facility in Bitola with Elbasan in Albania. This could complete the country's plan of having transmission lines with all of its neighbors in the region. Likewise, the North Macedonia-Greece interconnector could provide opportunities for its neighbors to the north, for Kosovo to perhaps get off some of the coal-fired power plants, and for Serbia to open up to other sources of gas other than Russia as well. So for all of these reasons, whether I'm in Skopje, North Macedonia, working with my partners there, we are looking at regional energy solutions that benefit all. I'll stop there and turn it over to my colleagues.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Hill, would you go next, please?
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. This is my first time here, so it's a real pleasure. Speaking of a real pleasure, I asked someone on my staff to come up with some basic energy numbers for Serbia, and I went through them, and they were just so depressing. I really, frankly, didn't want to spread my fears and depressions with the rest of the audience here, except to say Syria has some extremely serious problems. The first problem that Serbia has is that some 15 years ago, they made Russia a strategic energy partner. Whatever people thought at the time, this was not a good idea. they have put themselves in a position where essentially all oil supplies, crude oil, and eventually refined oil, goes through a Russian supplier. So the Russians are the owner of the main refinery in Serbia, and Russia also has the exclusive right to drill for oil in the northern part of Serbia called Vojvodina. And when they find oil, they pay a very small fee. Fees typically in the Middle East are about 25%. With respect to this Russian-Serbian deal, the fee is about 1.5%. So Serbia, I think, made a very bad deal on oil, and I haven't even got to the problem of gas. Serbia requires about 3 billion metric, whatever the indicator is, 3 billion something. They owe or they get 2.8 from the Russians. And then a funny thing happened just this year where the Russians said, we'll provide about 2, not 2.8. So you're on your own to find the rest. And the Russians have been very reluctant to talk about price for any additional gas. And the consequence is that Serbia is going to have to go on the equivalent of the spot market for gas and pay a lot of money for the gas supplies they need. So they are looking very closely at a number of these interconnectors, these pipeline projects. The Bulgarian interconnector is probably the one that is first going to yield results. It should be ready in October, and that will help a lot. There's also the possibility of a connector, not yet built, but certainly discussed, with Croatia. There's another one with North Macedonia. So there's, I think, a big effort to increase the use of gas in the economy, and that will also allow them to reduce the use of lignite coal. Lignite coal is almost 50%, 49% of their total energy supplies. It's very dirty coal. When they use it in electricity plants, they have to put mazout, this heavy oil, over it just to ignite the coal. So very serious problem. They need to reduce that. So for them, the intermediate solution is, of course, is going to be gas. Looking ahead to renewables, they have some 15% of their total output coming from hydropower, but they have problems with using the hydropower. They need to build pump stations so that they can save it and then use it when they need it. But when you look at some of the rivers around Serbia these days, and I would draw your attention to the Danube in particular, you'll see a real shortage of water flowing through those rivers. One of the new tourist sites on the Danube River is the site of several World War II German gunships sunk by the Germans as they were retreating from the Red Army, lying on their side right in the middle of the Danube River. It's extraordinary, and it points to the fact that there are serious water shortages in the Danube. I think Assistant Secretary Volz made very clear that really when you talk about energy sovereignty, you're really talking about regional approaches. And regional approaches, as we know, are a process that has not necessarily come naturally to people in this region. But I think due to this energy crisis, we're seeing a lot more of what is very necessary to do. Ambassador Burns alluded to some of the approaches, and I think they're out of these regional efforts. We will see an eventual solution to the energy problem. I think gas is very much in the picture for Serbia for some years, but they're also looking at the possibility of these small modular nuclear plants. They're looking, of course, at more hydro, and they have some wind and they have some solar. No one really knows what the energy picture will be 30 to 50 years from now. They may find wind doesn't compete with solar anymore, or vice versa. So I think we're going to look at a broad mix of programs. And as discouraged as one could get from the current data and from that deal with Russia some 15 years ago, I think the lessons have been learned. And while historians and lawyers may want to look back and see who made that deal, I think it's important for diplomats and other leaders, especially in energy ministries, to look forward and see what can be done. So I think out of this very difficult circumstance will be that difficult circumstance will indeed be the mother of invention, and we're going to see a lot of effort. I have never gone in to see a senior Serbian official where, frankly, energy in some dimension of it hasn't been the main subject. So it is definitely something on their minds. They're looking to us. They're looking to the European Union. They're looking to everybody with one notable exception. They're not looking to Russia. I think this energy crisis will be the death of that relationship that people have talked about for a number of years between Serbia and Russia. There are obviously residual elements of it, relations between churches, a lot of sort of cultural affinities. But Mr. Putin has taken that country deep into the forest, and we don't see any prospect of him emerging very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Mustafa?
Paristo Parapoli. Thank you very much for the invitation to be back here in beautiful Greece. This is my first assignment, was here in Greece, so it holds still a very special place in my heart, and I always love to come back here. Let me just highlight again for all of you the fact that we are all here, along with the large number of officials from Washington, tells you our commitment to this issue. It is really hard to get us all together. So you have this number of ambassadors, almost 10 officials from Washington. Things have changed since we were here last year. But we are even more committed as the United States with our European partners to get over this dependency that so many have on one country. One of the things that we have all learned in this process is the importance of planning ahead, right? In energy, things don't take a day, months. It takes years sometimes to get things to move. And what we have learned is we need to start planning. We need to start making decisions. We need to start implementing. And so that is a good thing. Now, let me turn my gaze northward to Bulgaria and tell you how I see things as a friend, partner, and ally. And as I look at my Bulgarian colleagues in the room, again, I'm the friend, partner, and ally, and this is how I view things. Let me start by celebrating some of the things that have happened, which I think is very, very important to do. So I'll start with a big success. For those of you who heard me speak last year, my message was IGB, IGB, IGB. And it's going to happen. It was supposed to have happened earlier, yes, but days away from happening, and that is significant. So congratulations on that huge win for Bulgaria, for Greece, for the whole region, and it really does open up so many possibilities. Bulgaria also just recently took another huge step because it decided to double its capacity commitment at Alexandroupolis, which is a very significant decision. Because that will be 1/3 at least from a non-Russian source. So that is a very, very significant decision that was taken by Bulgaria. As the US, we hope that that is also shared with North Macedonia, because the greater regional collaboration, as you've heard here is a theme, only makes us all stronger. So what I want to focus on, as I mentioned before, long-term decisions. We're talking a lot about short-term, this winter. What do we think is going to happen? Alexandroupolis coming online, the large capacity that's there means time to think about the long-term contract and signing a deal. Thinking about it has been happening for about 2 years, at least, I would say, in Bulgaria. Great. Time to make that decision is what I would say to my Bulgarian friends and partners. It's very, very important to do that. The fact that Bulgaria years ago signed a 25-year contract with Azerbaijan years ago, boy, wasn't that smart looking at it now. So do the same in terms of a long-term contract at Alexandroupolis. So those are two fabulous developments. So while my message last year was IGB, my message this year is keep your eyes on the nuclear sector. Don't take your eyes off the nuclear sector. All right? I say that, and I hope the policymakers in this room, the companies in this room, the European decision makers will keep their eyes on the nuclear, particularly in Bulgaria. In 2014, EU member states said, we pledge to diversify our nuclear supply. Bulgaria is still 100% reliant upon one energy source. That was the same in gas. Look how long it took. Finally, it's shifting. Lukoil is also still a big factor in Bulgaria. Nuclear is 100%. I'm not too confident it's moving anywhere. Keep your eyes on the nuclear. While we all talk about gas, that allows the nuclear sector to continue to delay. There have been opportunities to diversify, but constant obstacles that are somehow in the way. And those obstacles, as we all know in the energy sector, are often obstacles that are created by the person who holds that monopoly. The nuclear sector, as you already heard from Ambassador Burns in the region, has so much potential for exporting electricity, for example. And it's not just about the fuel. The nuclear facility there has old Soviet equipment to upgrade to Western technologies. So important to do. And again, why? We're here to talk about breaking away from dependencies. And breaking away from dependencies makes countries stronger, it makes the region stronger, it makes our partnership stronger. And so that is why I hope we all keep our eyes on the nuclear. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my good friend, Ambassador Yurikim.
Go ahead. Thank you, Ambassador Mustafa.
Thanks very much.
Let's keep our slogans to a few words, a few letters. IGB. I would forget that last year. IGB. I have to find an acronym for keep eyes on nuclear sector. Something KY. Thank you.
Right, great. It's a great pleasure to be back. Last year, we had a conversation about what is happening in the region, and in particular, I had mentioned to all of you that something is happening on energy in Albania. Now, I don't know if you all believed me when I said that last year, but I think the proof is in the pudding now. And so I thought I'd bring you up to date on some of the key developments. I know you've already heard from Deputy Prime Minister and Energy Minister Baluku just a little while ago, but let me reinforce some of those points and talk about U.S. support for these various energy projects in, through, and with Albania that will have implications for all of our markets in the region. So first of all, I believe that you all are aware of the hydropower project at Skavica. And if that goes according to plan, we're looking at construction possibly beginning this year, and eventually producing upwards of 200 megawatts of energy. But more importantly than that, it would enable Albania, and in that way the region, to optimize existing hydropower production. That's part of Albania's major energy production for domestic consumption, right? They're almost 100% dependent on hydro and a few other renewables. So we continue as the United States to find ways to support Albania's efforts to diversify suppliers, sources, and routes. And we're seeing some of that happen. Last year, I'd also touched upon what we thought then would be a small contained project to bring in LNG into Albania through the port of Vlora at a thermal power plant there. What's happened since then, since in the year, is that the government of Albania, the government of the United States, and American companies have realized that actually this project is extremely important strategically, not just for Albania, but for the region, and has the potential to significantly increase the capacity of TAP to bring energy into the rest of Europe. So as you all know, we have the Trans-Adriatic pipeline beginning in Azerbaijan, cutting through Bulgaria, Greece, Albania, which is just supposed to be a pass-through under the Adriatic into Italy. When that project finished, when TAP finished and the Vlora project began, we were at a point in time where no one had imagined that there might be a spigot, so to speak, in Albania. The TAP project now is poised to inject 5 BCM. The Vlora project is poised to inject 5 BCM into TAP through an entry point at Fier. So we would need to build a pipeline from the port in Vlora to Fier. That's against the existing full capacity of 20 BCM for TAP, only 10 of which is committed. So there's room there to grow. That would mean more energy available for markets in Bulgaria, Greece, and if interconnectors are built, then in North Macedonia, Montenegro, and other points as well. So this will diversify, but it will also increase overall energy capacities. The third project, third development is one that is onshore. And I think you may have heard about it from Minister Baluku, so I won't get too much into it. I don't know that it's ready to be rolled out in any major way, but I will say that it will certainly add to diversification in Albania and in a way that is probably likely to surprise all of us. Add to all of this is increasing efforts to introduce and build out solar and wind production capacity. And then finally, of course, our efforts to integrate the regional market. And this is an effort that the United States is proud to support through AID, through our regional energy projects. We've already moved ahead with efforts to integrate Albania and Kosovo. And I believe that we're also looking at other markets as well. So let me leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ambassador Tsounis?
Ευχαριστώ, Νίκο. Καλησπέρα. Καλώς ορίσατε στη Θεσσαλονίκη. Είναι μεγάλη τιμή μου να είμαι εδώ. One of the disadvantages of being the final speaker here after my learned colleagues have given us so much data, I sort of feel like Elizabeth Taylor's seventh husband who once said, I think I know what I'm doing, I just don't know how to keep it interesting. So I will try to add something to the discussion. You know, let's not kid ourselves. We have some very serious challenges. These challenges are not unique to the region. They are on a global setting. Nat gas in Europe and in Asia is 8-9 times what it is in the United States. It would be the equivalent of oil being at $400 or $500 a barrel. These are unprecedented, maybe even higher, $600 a barrel. It's unprecedented. It's a challenge. I don't want to spend a lot of time as to how we got here. You know, this is the reason why rearview mirrors are very small, and you know, you don't want to spend a lot of time going backwards. There were some very bad decisions that were made, and Russia very adeptly used energy as a geostrategic tool. It was a carrot. For countries that cooperated, they were special deals, and countries, you know, that had, you know, democratic thoughts and principles, you know, we were cutting you off. So where do we go forward from here? There are a series of short-term, medium-term, and long-term solutions in the toolbox. It's going to be a very painful 2 winters. So short-term, the cheapest energy that you will ever use is the one that you don't use. So conservation is very important. We had our thermostats at the embassy at 23. For air conditioning, we brought them up to 24. As we're going into the fall, you know, there's no need for it. As we go through the winter, we're going to be very, very careful with lights and our thermostats. That's really important. We should speak about that, because that is something that is within our control, and you know, we can make a substantial difference in that manner. Greece is, you know, it's very interesting. I remember through a 10-year crisis how Greece was a punching bag. You know, the Europeans were going to kick them out of the euro, and you know, they were ridiculed on CNBC. So last year, Greece came up with north of 8% GDP growth. The second quarter was 7.7%. Boy, are they back. A resilient people, a resilient region. But they're also a very large part in the solution, given their location, given their infrastructure. Vethousa has enlarged itself tremendously. So you have a tremendous amount of storage capacity in Vethousa. And Greece is using that additional capacity to help its neighbors. I got a call from Washington saying you have to go speak to Minister Skrekas, our energy minister, about getting 2 slots there for U.S. LNG ships to deliver it to Bulgaria. Because Bulgaria has paid a higher price than anyone when Russia decided to make an example of them. And it was literally Greece who has primarily been the country that has helped them in addition to the United States. They need a lot more help. They need a lot more help. So before I get into the other medium, short-term, long-term solutions, there's 2 battles going on. The first is a very honorable one. It's about decarbonization. It's about climate change. It's about energy transition. And we all have very sincerely held beliefs about that because climate change is real. Let's trust intrinsic scientific data here. It's real. My friend and colleague, talked about part of the World War II German Navy being visible from the Danube now, but look at floods in Pakistan. You're looking at Lake Powell and Lake Mead at 28% capacity. These are real challenges. So on the one hand, we have decarbonization, energy transition, and climate change. On the other hand, we have to be rather practical and keep the lights on. This winter, let's do everything we can to do that, because it's not just about energy scarcity. This is about food scarcity. There have been several fertilizer plants that have closed down in Europe. That speaks about lower crop yields. We have a Black Sea that's mined, grain more difficult to get out. That speaks to a humanitarian crisis that has been created in Ukraine. That speaks to an energy crisis that's been created largely due to what the Russians have done, to a food scarcity issue. These are very consequential times and very consequential problems. And they're not going to be solved all at once. So additional short-term solutions, the floating storage regasification unit at Alexandroupoli will come on at the end of 2023. There's a floating storage regasification unit in Evethousa that's coming on right now. The Bulgarian interconnector is going to be very helpful. Those are short-term solutions. On the more medium-term side, Motor Oil is doing one in Corinth. There's a second one in Alexandroupoli. There's a proposed interconnector I think will happen in North Macedonia. Now, we can't stop at Bulgaria and North Macedonia. If we're going to be geostrategically smart and we're going to have to play three-dimensional chess with the Russians, those interconnectors have to go through Bulgaria, Romania, up through Moldova, and one day into Ukraine. We have to think long-term. The one in North Macedonia has to go to Kosovo and Serbia. We have to get Russia's boot off of Europe's neck. Now, we don't have a lot of these challenges in the United States, but they have them here amongst our allies. But even more important, they are problems of humanity. People will suffer. And I'm reminded of the chief rabbi of Berlin, Johann Prinz, who was the chief rabbi of Berlin at the time of Hitler, and spoke about the bigotry that existed at the time. But he said what was worse was the silence, was that people didn't speak up and people didn't act. We need to act, and we need to act in a very concerted effort, because this is nothing short about what type of world we want. Do we want a democracy or an autocracy? Do we want to respect the rules-based international order that has governed Europe for the last 3 generations? Or do we want countries inexplicably invading others and bombing children's hospitals? We need to act in a very concerted method to deleverage Gazprom, to work together to do this. I'm very proud of the cooperation of the United States and Greece, given Greece's strategic location and the fact that a lot of existing infrastructure and infrastructure that's about to come online is a very likely solution to a lot of these challenges. And having spoken to the Prime Minister and the Energy Minister, Greece is not only thinking about themselves, they're thinking about the region. They care about the people of Greece, but they also care about the people in Albania, in Bulgaria, in Serbia, and in North Macedonia. And this is how allies should act. This is leadership, because this is about a humanistic ethos. And I'll speak about the long-term solution. It's interconnectors that are going to come out of the Middle East. MBS has said that he has unlimited land, unlimited sun, and unlimited money. He has said that he produces 10% of the world's energy today, and he'll produce 10% of the world's energy in 30 years. It'll be a different type of energy. But it is the creation of energy through renewables and partially through LNG, at least for the medium term, through an electrical interconnector that comes into Greece, the strengthening of Greece's electrical grid, and then that goes all through Southeast Europe. That is the long-term and permanent solution on how we deleverage Russia. And as Russia accounts for 37% of their budget as energy sales, that's how you defang the snake. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you. I have to tell you, I was incredibly impressed with the panel before us, who are the true experts here, and I applaud you for coming down here and sharing your thoughts on us. It was very illuminating for me.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ, Ambassador. It's strange that I speak to you in Greek, but it's also a great pleasure.
It's all Greek to me.
So you mentioned climate change. A few days ago, Thessaloniki was flooded by rain. It was a huge problem here. I mean, this is clear signs of climate change. I think it's also very clear that we definitely need a lot of integration in this part of the world, this region. And I think it's time for cooperation and collaboration. We should set aside all the things that have separated us in the past and look forward to all the things that bring us together. And I think that Russia's war has been a catalyst in this, and we should benefit from that. And definitely we can see what is clearly evident here is the US's commitment. I mean, look at this panel. This speaks 1,000 words. So thank you all for being here sincerely. So may I ask you one question to all of you? So maybe we can go one by one. We're talking about this regional integration. What do you think are the impediments to regional integration? Ambassador Burns?
So if I'm being honest, I mean, we've all talked in violent agreement about how important regional integration is. It makes sense from a strategic perspective. The imperative is now, geopolitics demand it. And I think the political leaders recognize it. And we heard that in the last panel. We've heard that in other discussions. Probably the biggest challenge is trust, because integration means interdependence. And this is a region that has been torn apart at times, not only by conflict, but by disagreements over certain issues. And so to have these kind of discussions, again, at the expert level, it's great to be in a room like this and to see people nod as all of my colleagues spoke and agreed with this. But when it comes down to the national political decision-making, it requires a level of trust in one's partners that they truly are looking out, not just for their national strategic interests, but for the regional strategic interests and the partnership strategic interests. And I think that extends as well to the citizens who, again, are faced with an existential moment. Are their homes going to be warm enough? Are they going to be able to power their homes? And do we trust that our political leaders are working with partners that can be trustworthy? It's a really tough one.
Thank you. Mr. Hill?
I would certainly agree that trust is a major factor. I think it's also the, supply of history exceeds the demand. I think young people are really sick of this stuff. I mean, you see this in any country you go to. They're just sick of their parents talking about this, this nationalism. And I can't say nationalism is dead in any of these countries, but, it's the generations are shifting on this. Regional integration can happen and is happening. North Macedonia, Albania, and Serbia have gotten together in something called Open Balkans, and they've pleaded for the other non-EU countries to come in. In fact, the Prime Minister of Montenegro came to the last meeting, but of course, in the meantime, he's now a technical prime minister. We don't even know how long that will be. But it's clear these countries need good neighbors, and in having good neighbors, they're going to have good energy partners. So I think as difficult as this is, they have to establish more patterns of cooperation. Stick with it. If someone doesn't want to come to the meeting in September, make sure you're ready for them at the next meeting. Sooner or later, people can overcome these trust factors, and also maybe listen a little more carefully to their constituents who are sick and tired of standing at border lines when you can go from Hungary to Scandinavia and never slow down at a border. So I think that statistic I heard of the Balkans, where if you add up every lorry that stops at a border and you add up the time, 3 hours, 4 hours, et cetera, in 1 year, you get 1,000 years of waiting at borders. I thought, although that statistic was so good, I didn't want to check it. I felt I had to, and the person came back to me and said, well, actually, it's wrong. It's 2,000 years. So, that has to be addressed. And whether it's a technology issue or whatever, I mean, you cannot have a situation where every 40 minutes you're stuck at the border for 5 hours. So they need regional approaches to these issues. And I think this kind of brutal necessity caused by energy will be the mother of this new invention of cooperation.
Fantastic statistic. Fantastic. Thank you. Ambassador Mustafa, do we have an acronym for this?
No, but I have 3 points. The first, domestic political instability is always an impediment, because when you have leaders who change, then decisions sometimes are reversed. You start over in terms of relationship building, new plan, new approaches. And so domestic political instability is definitely one factor. The second is a view still, but although this is hopefully changing for the better, a view still that it's transactional relationships. Yes, I will let you offload one shipment, but what am I going to get in return? And that political price countries are still thinking about. So that's the second impediment. And I would say the third is still a little bit of the zero-sum game mentality in terms of looking at, let me build this pipeline first before we complete the other, use more of my route rather than this other. And so I think if those are all removed, and instead, as friends, partners, and allies, we look at this as an opportunity for each one of us to become stronger without looking at it transactionally or in zero-sum game viewpoints, that will go a long way.
Fantastic, thank you. Ambassador Kim.
Right, I think, for all of us who are on this panel, the thing about Americans is we're very practical. So I agree fully with all of my colleagues, and in particular with what Ambassador Hill was saying about finding every opportunity to build regional cooperation, to build the habit of regional cooperation. And that is why we support very strongly the Open Balkans. And, we're looking forward to seeing all 6 members of the Western Balkans participating in this, giving this a try. And we're pleased with the progress that's been made so far. All of these are practical steps, reducing times, waiting at borders and all of that. It reminds me of something that one of Greece's recent foreign ministers said when, about the situation with North Macedonia, in fact. And I'll never forget it, because what he said was, history should be a school, not a prison. So I hope we learn the right lessons and take practical steps from there.
Thank you, Ambassador Tunis.
Thank you, Nico. I'm very sorry there was flooding in Thessaloniki, but I have to tell you, 2 weeks ago, I was praying for rain in Greece so we wouldn't have forest fires. You know, it's surreal because I'm praying that we don't have one natural disaster largely due to climate change, but we have another national disaster due to climate change that would prevent the first natural disaster. Folks, we have a problem, and it's only getting worse. But it also speaks to what I think is the biggest challenge, and that is the enemy of great is good. We talk about zero carbon in 2040. We talk about zero carbon in 2050. Both are laudable achievements. Good people can disagree on this. I respect a lot of point of views. I don't respect the point of view that ignores science, that we don't have climate issues, or the drill baby drill mentality. I look at Greece's example, which is a best practices one. Top 10 country in Europe, 52% of energy comes from renewables. If you, my president, President Biden has said, who is a great friend of Greece and understands this country better than anyone who has ever held that position, has said, don't tell me your values, show me your budget and I'll show you your values. And if you look at how Greece is looking to spend their resilience and recovery monies and their framework monies from the EU, a large part of it is in renewables and green energy. So let's go to the very honorable debates. Is it green hydrogen? Is it batteries? Is it wind? Is it solar? Which one should we do? Well, do all of them. But in the meantime, we're going to have to, at least for a transition period, also do LNG. Now, for this year, because we're in their extremis, there's going to be more lignite. So our decarbonization goals are going to have to get put back because you'd like the lights to turn on. You'd like a hospital to have power so they can perform surgeries. I don't want to go back to lignite. This government in Greece doesn't. No one does. But we have a real serious challenge this year. So we're going to have to sort of triage a little bit. But the ethos is here. Renewables, 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 renewables. And in the meantime, if we shut down a coal plant and replace it with LNG, and we reduce the carbonization by 50%, that's still a good thing. It's good. It's not perfect. But we should not engage, we should not stop engaging in efforts that promote decarbonization because they're not the perfect solution just yet. And a little bit of NIMBYism. You know, there's a lot of communities that may not want turbines and such. And I also think I'm concerned about the me first. All of us have challenges here. I understood one of the challenges the world had a couple of years ago when it came to the vaccinations. Let's get our country vaccinated first, and then we'll worry about everyone else. I have to tell you, that's a very short-term attitude because there's a lack of fundamental fairness and it causes resentment. We're all in this together. We have to solve these challenges as partners, you know, with a sense of respectful engagement. And if only in concert, and here's the practical thing. If you want to deleverage Russia, you don't do it yourself. They just have too many chips on the table. You get everybody together and you go after them, which means we're going to have to move in concert, which means it's not only about our country, It's about every other country joining us. And we have to demonstrate that we care about everyone else as much as we care about ourselves to fix this common challenge that we have. And I will tell you, never in the history of man, over the long term, have the forces of evil beaten the forces of good. Putin has made a massive miscalculation. And he has miscalculated how angry and how awoke he has made the world, because no one wants Vladimir Putin to have this type of leverage in an energy security matter, which is also a national security matter, any longer. And I think you're going to see the world come together and push upon all of these changes to do so.
I just wanted to make a quick addition on the issue of this, overcoming distrust, et cetera. I was at this Open Balkans meeting that Ambassador Kim mentioned, and one of the first speakers was the Prime Minister of Albania, Edi Rama. So he stood up in front of this huge crowd. It was actually, they were combining a wine festival, which was kind of fun. I never had so much wine in my life, but anyway. And Edi Rama says, my staff prepared this speech for me. And the first line here is that Albanians invented wine back in the Bronze Age in 2000 BC. And then Rama said, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but it doesn't belong in this meeting. And, this is a guy who really got the point of this, which was to be together, understand we have a common future, albeit a troubled past, and go forward. And then just the other day, news hit the wires about this cyber attack on Albania. And I happened to be with a visitor meeting with President Vučić, and the news had just hit, and Vučić said, I got to call Eddie. Nice instinct. And so I think just keeping at it, don't get discouraged when it doesn't move. Don't get discouraged when someone won't come because they're saying you're creating a greater Serbia or greater Albania. Just keep at it, and eventually you'll overcome the problems.
Thank you. Thank you all. I've been receiving threatening messages from the team that's organizing it, and it's vibrating on my wrist. So I need to wrap it up. May I ask you one final statement, including the question, we've discussed investments. We've discussed the role that the US could play. Could the US do more? Ambassador Burns.
Well, I think presenting a united front and a united message about the importance of regional energy independence, climate resilience, pulling together on all these big challenges is the first and foremost fundamental message that we can make here. And they're really, just to echo what my colleagues have said, the challenges are huge, but the opportunities are also there as well. Not only is it crystal clear that decisions that should have been made years ago now have to be made and have to be implemented, that the cost is too high not to make these decisions and investments now. That has never been more compelling. There's also been good progress in the region. The EU has finally recognized the importance of advancing North Macedonia's EU accession along with Albania. This is a hugely positive development. The United States and Europe have never been more strongly united on a number of issues, as Das Bolt said, working together on the energy security of all of our partners. And with Open Balkans Initiative moving forward, we're seeing creativity in some of these regional arrangements that is starting to make a real difference for citizens. Now, when it comes to US businesses, they look at this region now with new eyes. And we are seeing more and more US investors coming to North Macedonia. They're competing with some great Western investors, particularly when it comes to photovoltaic and other renewable energy projects. We would love to see them more engaged. The biggest challenge in North Macedonia for these US investors, like in other parts, is financing because of the current economic crisis. And so we're very pleased that the Development Finance Corporation Chief Development Officer Andrew Herskowitz is here at this forum, but also then coming to Skopje to have some discussions as well. So I think there's a lot of activity and energy happening.
Thank you.
I think the US can do more, we should do more, we will do more. And I think the message of, as you pointed out earlier, we have a great interest in this part of the world. And it's not just because Russia has planted itself in the Balkans once again, and that's been an age-old effort of ours for at least 75 years, but we understand we have very organic relations with all these countries. In a sense, we had something to do with helping many of these countries through very difficult periods in their history. The U.S. did a lot of that. The only thing I would stop at is these countries need to deal with each other. And so the time when someone says to me, oh, could you call so-and-so because I really don't like what you call so-and-so. You got a telephone. In fact, you're on your cell phone every day, every minute of the day. You call them and let me know how it goes. And if there's anything the U.S. can do to help, we'll help. But this is your responsibility to be directly in touch. So we cannot be a nursemaid to these countries. They need to make their own decisions, form their own budgets, form their own governments. Someone asked me about the new government situation in Serbia. I said, look, every time I've been asked for a name or something, I've provided one, I've always been wrong. You know your country better than I do. You pick the people. I'll work with whoever you pick. I mean, I wish they picked baseball fans. They never do. They always pick people that I have to work with in various ways, but that's the way it ought to be. So we need to be very involved, but not in a sort of paternalistic way. These guys got to do their homework and do it on their own.
Yes, we can do more. We are willing to do more. In where I'm at, there needs to be a desire for the U.S. to do more because in many countries, Russia has built the debate to be it's the U.S. that is after us, and in the energy sector as well, going with the U.S. is not necessarily a good option, and so there's a desire to balance. So we definitely can do more to strengthen the relationship, but there has to be a willingness for that. And if there is still a desire to balance, we can help in other ways. Just to make sure that the goal of diversification is met, because again, that is what's going to make these countries in the region stronger, and a stronger region means a stronger Europe, which means a stronger transatlantic relationship.
I don't think I can add anything more to that. Yes, we're here. We want to do more. You're going to see us do more in every sector, but we got to do it together.
If you look over your left shoulder, you'll see who this is sponsored by. If you look at the names here, they're all Greek or American. Greece and the United States have figured out the cooperation in this space. And the level of cooperation is unprecedented, and it's highly, highly effective. And what Greece and the U.S. is doing, if we succeed, and I think we will make Greece an energy hub for Southeast Europe. And it makes sense because the infrastructure is there, the coastline is there, and it also helps that Greece controls 20 to 25% of the world's fleet to transport it. Now, having said that, we have become to realize that energy security is national security, that it's a geostrategic, geopolitical tool. And if we don't manage this, we can all be hurt by this. We have been all hurt by this. And there's going to, we're going to feel the consequences, and we are feeling them already. I'm proud of the United States. We don't have this issue back home. What was temporarily $5 a gallon at the pump has a 3 in front of it. And if you take out California, it's even lower. So the problem has subsided, but the president has made the commitment, because we are by far the largest oil and nat gas producer in the world, that we have to help our allies. And we have to help people that haven't traditionally been our allies, because it's just the right thing to do. So can the U.S. do more? Yes. Number one, convening, providing strong, moral, effective leadership, being very clear-eyed about this, providing investments when necessary. And I will tell you, we have brought Das Lockman here, Das Volts, and Andy Hershowitz, who's the Chief Development Officer of DFC, who told me today, look, we've only used about half of our $60 billion in capacity that we have to spend on these issues. That's a great statement by the United States. They're putting effort. First of all, we're showing up, we're putting effort, and we're putting resources to solve a global problem that impacts us less. But we realize we have to show leadership because it's impacting people around the world. So as Chris has said, we can do more, we will do more, we should do more. But I got to tell you, I'm really proud of my colleagues, all of which I look up to and are mentors to me. And I'm really proud of how our government has stepped forward and helped address what's a global problem.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think we'll close it on this note. I sincerely want to thank all of you for being here. This ambassadorial firepower in this panel is amazing. And I invite you and look forward to having you here next year at the 7th Southeast Europe Energy Forum. Thank you so much.